Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are taking a look at the second Papo 2020 figure to hit my channel, and this one is another one of those figures that was a little controversial, because just like the Giganotosaurus, there were quite a bit of people that were excited for it, but there was also quite a bit of people that were not too happy about the figure in general, like the kind of wrist being pronated and things like that. They weren't too excited about it, a lot of complaints I had heard, but personally, I was actually really quite psyched for the figure, and overall, I thought it was a really cool looking figure and definitely very unique, especially in comparison to a lot of the older Papo figures. It's such an obscure species that, again, I never in a million years expected Papo to create. This is their Chilesaurus, and it is a really nice looking figure here in person, and I'm definitely a fan already. I know there's quite a bit of, hate toward the figure, just like the Giganotosaurus, but personally, my opinion is I really do quite like it. So, let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt, you can see that the head sculpt looks really nicely done. Beautiful scales all over the head sculpt. You have some really nice kind of larger scales here on the lower jaw that taper off to a smaller scaling the closer you get to the outer part of the mouth, and you also have a beak right here at the tip of the mouth. You can see the nostrils are sculpted and painted quite nicely. They've been given a nice darker coloration there to elaborate them. You can also see that the eyes are painted nicely as well. There's like an orangish color, then you have like a yellow and a black pupil in there, so quite a few different tones of color included in the eye area of our Chilesaurus, and you can also see a little bit of a darker coloration there, kind of bordering around the eye to elaborate it just a tad. The beak itself is actually nicely done. You can see it's painted. If it would focus on, his head's too small, I guess. If you take a look there at the tip of the beak, it's painted with a nice brownish coloration and seems to have included a nice wash to bring the cracks and crevices of the beak out quite nicely. Over here, if we look at the opposing side of the head, again, pretty much the same deal. Looks really nice, very lively. And overall, a really beautiful job as far as the head sculpt in both the sculpt and paint department here on the part of Papo. And as you can see, that is a very small head sculpt. The figure overall is really small for sure. We do have an articulated jaw, which can open pretty darn wide. If you look inside the mouth, you can see it looks super strange in there, but really cool at the same time. You have a nice kind of like a light pink for the inside of the mouth coloration. And again, my camera doesn't want to focus on it. You have the tongue sculpted out there. That looks really nice. The tongue appears to have a nice textured look to it. You also have the teeth down there. And again, with the head being so small, it's quite impressive how good the paint looks and the sculpt and everything looks inside the mouth. You can see the teeth are actually painted really nicely there on the lower jaw, as are up here on the upper jaw. Look at how good that looks. Very impressive as far as that paintwork goes. You can see even here on the skin flap on the side of the mouth also sports some nice detailing and some nice coloration. As we start to move back here into the body, you have like a bluish coloration up here, and you taper that off to a nice brownish coloration, and you pick up a really cool striping effect throughout the dinosaur, and I think that looks really neat. You have some very nice scales as we move down the length of the neck, which is a pretty decent sized neck for a dinosaur to have, and you can also see a little bit of hanging skin here in the throat with a few ridges on it, a few ridges up here at the top of the head as well. And then as you move down here, you also have a few ridges down in this spot, and then a few more ridges up here on the top of the back. But I think the sculpting here of the neck looks really nice. You can see the throat of the dinosaur right there, but just the scale work and everything looks really beautiful as we move down along the dinosaur's neck into the body. You can see the shoulder blade is nicely protruding from the skin there, and it's really nicely elaborated because it feels like it's tensing due to the dinosaur having the weight of the body here kind of on this one arm, because the other arm is actually up off the ground. But you can see it's really putting a lot of pressure there on that arm, and you can really see that in the sculpt as far as like the tensing of all the muscles right there. Very nicely sculpted out hand. You can also see the nails are painted okay. There's some black paint there for the nails, and they do have a gloss coat, but there's just a little bit of sloppiness here on mine as far as the black going up onto the fingers as opposed to staying on just the nails. You have some beautiful skin detail right here with the skin stretching off of the body as well and forming some skin folds here in the stomach region. Very nice sculpted detail here in the stomach region as well as like the scaly effect there, and you can almost make out the rib cage a little bit as well. You can see like sort of an awkward seam right there, and I think that's over here on this side as well. Yes, very bad right here. I don't know why that is. You can actually see it run up along the leg as well, so something happened there as far as this figure goes from Papo, which is definitely an eyesore on the figure, unfortunately, but it's not the end of the world. It's just not the best Papo figure that you're ever going to find as far as seams and everything go, as that's usually not an issue with Papo. You have some more ridges as we get back here, which look really cool. You can also see some nice muscle tone here in the thigh region. Nice kneecap, and you can also see that it transitions from that brown to a nice green, but the stripes continue. They're a brown right here, but now they seem more like a dark green or like a grayish coloration. It's really hard to tell. You can see that there is some nice musculature there in the calf, beautiful scales and everything as we move down the leg, very nice skin texture into the feet. The feet look great. They have a very nice scoot-like appearance down the toes. Nice wash has been given to bring that detail out quite nicely. And the nails here of the feet are painted with like a blackish coloration, and they've been given a very nice gloss coat so that they shine quite realistically. You can see the skin kind of stretching off of the body a little bit there as this leg is pulled far forward, really far forward. And then as we move out the length of the tail, you can continue to see how nice that skin texture looks. You could sort of see like some ridges that run along the spinal column, but not like anything that's over elaborated, just some very small ridges that follow the spinal column. And you can also see a nice striping effect pick up, and it transitions back to like that brownish coloration, and then transitions to a very nice dark tip here at the end of the tail. But you could see a beautiful curve in that tail, very nice looking as far as that curve goes. And over here, you can pretty much see the same thing. Again, the head is actually turned to the left, so you could sort of see the skin bunching up right here the closer you get to the neck, whereas over here it's much more stretched out. And I think that's one thing that is excellent as far as Papo goes, is they always do a great job of really paying attention to like the fine details and exactly what would be going on with the kind of skin detail of the body at that point in time with the movement of whatever figure they're sculpting out. So that is definitely very nicely done. And you can also see down here that the shoulder blade is again elaborated, but it's not as elaborated as you see over here because now the dinosaur has its arm up into the body. It's not putting as much pressure on the body, so it's not really as elaborated or flexing like we had seen on the previous side. But you can see that the arm over here looks really nice as far as the skin texture again. And you can also pick up on the fact that there's a nice dark wash here, which brings that detail out in incredible fashion. Nice hand sculpt over here. You can really get a better idea of what the hand sculpt looks like, as opposed to this one that's just kind of down on the ground. This one's up in the air, so you can see it a little nicer. The detailing here on the underside of the dinosaur as well looks really, really good. I love the detailing here in the chest region. You can also see that the legs are kind of spread apart fairly far. I don't know why, but it almost has like a frog-like effect to the way that the legs are sculpted. As we move back here into the body, again, beautiful detailing here in the stomach, aside from this stupid seam right there. And as we get back here, you can pick up on the hip bone a little bit. Very nice musculature in both the thigh and calf region of the dinosaur. Nice folding of the skin going on right there in the bend of the leg. Nice kneecap, and then the foot sculpt over here looks really good, just like we had seen on the previous side. Again, very nice dew claw as well is present. And then we move out the length of the tail over here, and it looks very nicely done, just like it had on the previous side. So this figure overall is absolutely gorgeous as far as both sculpt and detail goes. As far as a size on our Chilesaurus, it's very small. You were looking at about 5 3/4 inches or about 14.5 centimeters, and a height here to the tail, you are going to see it at about 3 1/4 inches or around the 8.5 centimeter range, maybe just a little bit under 8.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Golovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, and you can see next to our Chilesaurus that he is definitely quite small, like I had stated earlier, and even smaller than kind of an Attack Pack size, which I think is still okay. It's a really nice figure, and being smaller is definitely a nice figure to have if you have an overflowing collection, so you can easily purchase this figure, slide it into your collection somewhere without taking up much room, which is definitely a plus if you're like me that has a ton of figures. But at the same time, I do tend to like a little bit of a larger size to my figures sometimes, so personally I would have preferred it to be a little larger, but the small size at the same time is still pretty darn good. So this 2020 Papo Chilesaurus is a really cool figure of a very obscure species. I personally don't know too much about the species. I know a little bit, but I had heard quite a lot of people, again, complaining about it at first, about like accuracy and the pronated arm, and just different things about the figure that they were not a big fan of. And there may have been a few issues that are incorrect on the sculpt that I might have missed, because again, I'm not the most knowledgeable man when it comes to this species, as it's just not really a species I've ever been too interested in, although Papo actually creating this figure has kind of spiked my interest, so I might look into it a little more now. But again, as far as I'm concerned and what I see here, it is a really nicely done figure. The sculpt is beautiful, really nicely showing all the detail that could potentially be included. It's all there, and it's all there in really nice fashion. Papo always does a great job as far as their sculpts, and including every little ounce of detail you could possibly expect to find. They will find a way to include it, and that's one thing that is very admirable about Papo, is just how good of a job they do as far as really giving you that very highly detailed sculpt. The paint job as well is definitely very nicely done. You'll never get a paint job from Papo that looks exactly like the prototype, so of course the prototype almost always looks a little bit more flashy, a little bit nicer, but I think that what has happened here is a really nice transition between the prototype paint job and the actual factory released paint job. I really do think it has turned out quite nicely done overall, and all the paint on it looks very nice and natural, and overall definitely looks like body color and not paint on a figure. And on top of that, the paint scheme they've gone with is a really nice natural paint scheme as well. So the only real downside to the figure, I think, is that there's a few weird kind of like seams and stuff on the figure, but if you actually take a look at the figure from a distance, you don't notice them too much, so it's not really that big of a deal, and it's actually a very minor nitpick, so it really overall is not much of an issue at all. So as far as this Chilesaurus goes, I am super impressed and 100% excited to now add this to my collection, as I did not have a figure of this species previously in my collection. So if you would like to pick one up yourself, I will include a link to Everything Dinosaur in the description, because that's where I picked up mine. So head to the description, go buy yourself a really nice Papo 2020 Chilesaurus, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.